All right, let's jump right into this explainer. Today, we're going to put on our auditor hats and tackle a massive buzzword in the energy sector right now: circularity. Specifically, we're looking at how that circularity is actually quantified for things like fuel cells and industrial batteries. It's a field that's just moving incredibly fast. But how do we measure the real, on-the-ground environmental impact at the end of a product's life? Let's figure it out. Are your products actually recyclable? I mean, that's the core question we are answering today. How do we separate the corporate marketing claims, those shiny green logos they slap on packaging, from strict mathematical reality? Well, we're going to use the actual sustainability accounting standard, the SASB standard, to find out if products are genuinely recyclable or if it's kind of just clever PR. To do this, our auditor's journey is going to cover 4 key steps. 1, the recyclability claim. 2, tracking recovered weight. 3, the real recycling math. And 4, the e-waste certification catch. Let's start with Section 1, the recyclability claim, where we look at metric RRFCF410B. Point 1 to see if a product design even qualifies on paper. You see, just because a giant industrial battery can theoretically be broken down in a lab, that doesn't mean it counts as recyclable out in the real world. SASB actually relies on this super strict ISO 14021 definition. It demands that the material must actually be diverted from the waste stream, collected, processed, and, this is the kicker, returned to use as raw materials or products. So it's not about potential, it's about actual practical recovery. But right out of the gate, there is a massive hurdle companies face. According to the standard, unless recycling facilities are available to a substantial majority, and by that they mean at least 60% of consumers or the communities where the item is sold, companies literally cannot make an unqualified recyclability claim, period. So, if access falls below that 60% threshold, the company has to explicitly add caveats to their claims. They must clearly qualify exactly what portions of the product are actually recyclable, just to avoid deceiving buyers. It is a built-in defense against greenwashing, right there in the accounting standards. Moving on to Section 2, tracking recovered weight. Let's talk about actually gathering the metric tons of material. So, under metric RRFC-410B.2, the auditor basically steps out of the design lab and onto the loading dock. Here, they're looking for the sheer weight in metric tons of materials collected at the end of their useful life that would have otherwise ended up as waste. This is the raw input for our circularity math. But wow, do you have to be incredibly careful here as an auditor. While end-of-life takebacks and third-party contracted collections are definitely included in the recovery metric, products or parts collected for in-warranty repairs, those are strictly excluded. And why is that? Well, because fixing a broken battery that's still in its useful life phase isn't end-of-life recycling, right? It's just maintenance. All right, Section 3, the real recycling math. Time to calculate the true percentage recycled. When calculating the actual percentage recycled, auditors aggressively separate the good pathways from the bad ones. The good pathways are things like reused components, reclaimed materials, or remanufactured parts. The bad pathways, well, those are portions discarded in landfills, direct incineration, and, pay really close attention to this one, energy recovery. So imagine you've recovered 100 metric tons of industrial batteries. As an auditor, you'd break down the pathways to see what legally qualifies. Say 60 tons are reused and 20 tons are recycled. That's great. But the 10 tons incinerated and the 10 tons sent to a landfill, yeah, those do not count toward your recycling percentage at all, no matter how much you collected initially. Think of this like a giant balance scale of circularity. You've got the total incoming recovered weight, but to find the true percentage, we have to ruthlessly deduct those incinerated and landfilled slices. That means our really impressive 100 tons of collected material shrinks to an actual 80% recycled score. The formula demands proof of true circularity, not just taking credit for collection. And this quote right here from the standard is the absolute nail in the coffin for a very specific type of greenwashing. Sometimes companies burn waste to generate heat and call it energy recovery, trying to frame it as an eco-friendly win. The SASB standard shuts that down completely. Burning waste for heat does not equal circularity. Finally, Section 4, the e-waste certification catch and standard certified handlers. Here is the catch. Even if the math looks absolutely perfect on your spreadsheets, the standard dictates that electronic waste material only counts as recycled if you can prove it was handed off to a certified third-party handler, You can't just pass it off to some unverified vendor out back and claim the credit. To actually get credit in your sustainability reporting, you've got to demonstrate that the e-waste went to handlers compliant with rigorous third-party certifications. Specifically, the standard highlights the e-Stewards standard for responsible recycling, or the R2 standard. This is what ensures the hazardous materials inside these batteries are handled safely and ethically down the line. Which really brings us back to why these frameworks exist in the first place. The SASB standards, which are now maintained by the ISSB, provide a globally consistent mathematical bulwark against vague environmental claims. It forces companies to actually show their work and prove their environmental impact with hard data. So the next time you're looking at an ESG report or a piece of industrial equipment with a flashy 100% recyclable badge, remember this auditor's journey. Remember this 60% rule, the strict math on incineration, and those required third-party certifications. If standard accounting doesn't buy the hype, why should you? Does their math actually add up, or are they just selling you smoke?